Hello everyone, my name is Joe Cardenas and I'm in the Master's Program for Physical Education with the emphasis of Sports Management and Leadership. And this is for PE 589, Physical Education and Exercise Science Capstone for Professor Andrew Allstott, Spring Term 2, 2016. Title of my capstone is Secondary School Student Athletes Awareness and Knowledge of Concussion and Return to Play Protocol. Introduction. Occurrence of concussions has gradually increased over time due to the increase of participation in sports, as well as concussions has taken the spotlight due to media because of the new data and research that has been done on concussion that has come out explaining its effects, long-term effects on our professional athletes to our secondary school student athletes, and in some cases causing death. So purpose of my study though is to investigate the awareness and knowledge that student athletes, secondary school student athletes possess in relations to signs and symptoms of concussion and return to play protocol. The way we will be doing this is through our central research questions, which is how they define concussion, to their knowledge that they possess about state law and return to play protocol, and 3, what source of information or material has assisted them in identifying a concussion and return to play protocol. Values, faith, and beliefs. I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will be thirsty. So this quote resonates with me and how I am as an athletic trainer, where the meaning to is giving and trust. So as an athletic trainer, student athletes trust us to give them the best care possible, and therefore we give them this by giving them the educational material, educating them about concussions and the policies and procedures that they need to follow. So it definitely resonates with me. 5 strengths. The Strength Quest revealed my 5 strengths, which were achiever, learner, analytical, harmony, and responsible. So the way how this pertains to the purpose of this study is that as an achiever, an athletic trainer has to accomplish their task, and in this case the task is gaining all the information, educational material on concussions by learning anything that's updated or guidelines or state laws that have been updated, so that we can analyze this and translate this to our student athletes to better protect them by giving them that tool, which again shows my responsibility to them and how I care for their health and well-being. So the first literature review that I'm going to be talking about was done by Kovasin et al. 2012, and this study was done on educating coaches in sports, and their evaluation of concussions by using the CDC Heads Up Youth and Sports Initiative. So purpose of this study was to gain the perception that youth sports coaches had after using the CDC Heads Up and youth sports material. And so the procedure used for this was that 1,000 random coaches were selected from the National Alliance of Youth Sports, and once they were selected, they were emailed a 22-item survey. Participants again were 1,000 random coaches from the National Alliance of Youth Sports, and the method that they used was a quantitative method using a 22-item survey that pertained to the demographics and awareness of concussion and the effectiveness or assistance of concussion educational material. What the results demonstrated was that they had a 34% response rate, as well as 24% of the participants reported that they had a concussion in their previous sports season from one of their athletes, and that also 44.6% reported that they would use this material to educate student athletes. But what really is important from this study that the results showed was that 77% of these participants said that the material helped them with identifying a concussion, as well as 50% said that they learned something new that they hadn't previously known about concussions. So how this applies to the current study is that it demonstrates how source material, informational, educational material is very important in helping student athletes, coaches, to identify concussion, to know what they're looking for so that they can follow the steps needed after that to return to play or return without having further symptoms through their progression. So second literature review that I used was from Bromley ETAL 2012, where the study was about high school soccer players with concussion education and their likelihood of notifying their coach during a game and reporting that concussion. So the purpose was again to examine the high school soccer players that had concussion education and their likelihood of notifying a coach during a game. And the procedure used was getting approval from the IRB of Pennsylvania State College of Medicine, and then also getting parent consent for the participants before performing the survey, which then participants were then given the survey. So participants were 183 high school soccer players, both male and female, from 9th through 12th grade. Method used for this was a quantitative method using 3 scenarios pertaining to concussion and return to play during a game. The results demonstrated that 60 out of the 183 participants submitted their survey, giving a 32.8% response rate, which what it demonstrated was that 72% of these participants informed that they would report 72% of these participants that had education informed that they would report a concussion during a game, while only 36% that did not have education would report a concussion during their game. So what the application of this study shows is that there's more likelihood of those that have an education to report a concussion, to identify a concussion. I think it gives them that comfort level to identify it, and they understand the effects if they continue to play, how it could affect them. So definitely having that education, that background of knowing what a concussion is beneficial for them. Third literature review that I am going over was done by Carson ETAL 2014, which has to do with premature return to play. So the purpose of this study was to figure the amount of patients that had sustained a sports-related concussion and how they demonstrated an increase in symptoms and a decrease in their functionality due to premature return to play or return to learn. So procedure for this was that it needed first ethics approval by the Scarborough's Hospital Research Ethics Board. And the study itself was a retrospective study that was done over a 5-year period. So the participants was actually 170 charts or cases from 159 patients. And the method used for this was both a mixed method, so using quantitative and qualitative methods, where they collected data from concussion history and cognitive and balance assessment, as well as assessments from using SCAT-1 and SCAT-2 forms. So what the results showed was that out of the 170 cases, 61.85% were male and the 38.15% were female. And from this, 55.8% were from secondary school student athletes. And what the results also demonstrated was that there was a 43.5% of these participants that had premature return to play, and 44.7% that had premature to return to learn. So how this applies to the current study is it demonstrates that, if guidelines aren't followed, it can cause the person who has sustained a concussion to have prolonged symptoms and have a decrease in their functionality of what they can actually do. And that's it for that. So next thing, my methodology. So the procedure I used in this study was that I recruited participants from Los Angeles County high schools. So all these participants were recruited from there, where then parent consent was needed before beginning the survey. Once consent was given, participants were emailed a link to log in to complete survey. And participants were 36 student athletes, both male and female, from 9th through 12th grade. Methods used was a mixed methods study, where then the data was then gathered and analyzed using Google spreadsheet. Name of the survey that was done was the Student Athletes Knowledge of Concussion survey, which the survey contained 10 demographic questions, 13 Likert scale questions pertaining to concussion and return to play knowledge, and then there was 2 open-ended questions that pertain to concussion and return to play knowledge, as well as 2 multiple choice questions that pertain to actually information sources for concussion and return to play protocol. The results. So there was 36 participants, and from this there was 27 males and 9 females. For the knowledge of concussion, the results demonstrated that 75% of the participants felt like the information that they gained from their school helped them to identify what a concussion was. But only 52.8% identified that they felt comfortable to identify it if they suspected it during a game of themselves or a teammate. Next, knowledge of return to play. The results showed that 0% of the participants knew about California State Law Assembly Bill 2127, and then 66.1% only knew 66.1% knew about return to play was at least 7 days. And finally, the data did also show that for information source of concussion return to play, that participants who had material available to for their school, that 61.1% said that they did have, that said yes, that they did have material available. 5.6% said no, they didn't, and 33.3% said that they didn't know. Now, from this question, there was a supplemental question that wasn't required, but 27 of the 36 participants did answer, where they were asked if what material was available to them, if there was any. And from this, One participant said CDC website, 7 said SCAT3 forms, 27 said athletic trainer, and 1 said other. Discussion. So many of the studies were supportive and similar in to the current study with defining concussion and the importance of defining concussion. How if student athlete or coach or anyone is able to define a concussion, it helps them to identify it so that they know what steps needs to be taken afterwards, and so that they are able to easily suspect it of themselves or another teammate. Now, in reference to similarities in previous studies of return to play, knowledge of state law, and return to play, I mean, the only similarity was the importance of the guidelines of return to play, that it's important. But there was more difference in where previous studies focused more on the effects of the state law and return to play, where the current study focused more on what actual knowledge student athletes possessed about state law and return to play. And finally, previous studies demonstrated a similarity with source of material on educational material for concussions, where both implied that the educational material definitely was beneficial for student athletes in identifying a concussion and giving them that comfort level so that they know the effects and the risks of continuing activity once a concussion is suspected, and what steps they need to take so that they can return to full activity a lot quicker and not have their symptoms prolonged. Finally, recommendations, implications, and future research. So some recommendations is that secondary schools have speakers and material on concussion education return to play protocol available for coaches, parents, and student athletes prior to their athletic season. That way it helps to inform them of what a concussion is, what policy is, and so that they're not surprised during the game, during the season, if they do sustain a concussion, of what they need to do. And also it helps them to identify it so that they do follow the steps needed for them to return back to feeling healthy and symptom free. Also, having an athletic trainer available to help evaluate, educate, and document concussions and the return to play steps is very important for secondary schools to have. As for implications, having the application of concussion return to play education will help to increase reporting and also decrease prolonged symptoms. Future recommendations, I would say investigate other regions to see if the data is consistent with those other areas. Also, maybe examining, what student athletes, how they define the mechanism of injury for a concussion, and also how return to learn affects student athletes and what student athletes know about it. And that's it. So if you guys have any questions, just let me know and I will answer them to the best of my capabilities. And thank you all.